you can imagine, over the course of 7 years, I've founded 2 companies and given birth to 2 children. And so I think the hardest moment over the course of those 7 years were when all 4 of those things were living alongside each other. 2 very young children, 2 very young companies, and just one me. And there's this sort of new thinking in the world. Maybe it's not new thinking, but I think there's a big emphasis in the world around work-life balance and sort of doing less, whereas that really wasn't an option for me. So I had to work on not doing less, but increasing my capacity for building these companies, increasing my capacity for building my family. But until I learned to build that capacity, I honestly felt very, very stretched. I think you get to a point in life where you decide you have to play life on your own rules. And what that looked like to me was really investing less time and energy in trying to get to perfect at anything, and really accepting that being good or good enough was going to have to be good enough. So probably what got me through that feeling of being so stretched was letting go of the need for perfectionism and really investing in this idea of radical acceptance, radical self-acceptance. Yeah, I think the through line across all of my entrepreneurial endeavors has been the relationship between food and people, right? I launched Zoom Pizza as a robot-enabled pizza company. I launched Mexique as a brand that brought healthy, fresh, delicious food. I launched Moonshot as a regenerative and organic snack brand. And when we launched Planet Forward, we were very much looking at the quarter of global greenhouse gas emissions that come from our food system. So for me, the through line has always been the relationship between food and the condition of people. And so where I get most excited about the future of all things, again, unsurprisingly, is related to food. And I think food supply chains more broadly. So the most innovative and exciting sort of places where I'm spending time now are all around the AI transformation of food systems and supply chains, and the ways that we can leverage artificial intelligence to create better outcomes for everyone. If you just think about the fact that talent is equally distributed amongst all people, but opportunity is not equally distributed. If you look at sort of what underrepresented founders face when trying to access venture capital, that disparity is so much more pronounced. I think less than 0.2%. I'm not saying 2%, I'm saying 0.2% of all venture activity, all venture funding goes to Black women like me. That is it's closer to 0 than it is to any whole number. And so the disappointing thing is that number hasn't changed in the last decade, despite all of the, what I might call performative sort of action that's happened against the problem. That number has remained steady. And so, while it is maybe interesting that I'm the first Black woman to found a unicorn company, what I have always been focused on is making sure that I'm not the last. And for me, that has looked like developing an angel investing practice. For me, that has looked like coaching and mentoring other founders. For me, that has looked like using my voice to bring more emphasis and focus to the problem. I don't have a silver bullet answer. I don't think there's any one single thing that we can do to ensure that when you and I sit down together in 5 years, that 0.2% is closer to 20. But I do think it takes conversations like the one we're having now, and at least naming the issue to get people to move. The answer really is you have to write the check. That really is the answer. I think often underrepresented founders are over-mentored and underfunded. And so the single most important thing that people who are in a position to allocate capital can do is to just go ahead and write the check. I don't know whether I believe in imposter syndrome as a syndrome, but I certainly know that there were many times early in my career in Silicon Valley where I felt very much like an imposter. And I would walk into a room as the only, no matter what it was, the only pregnant person, the only person of color, the only woman, name the only. And I often felt that I wasn't qualified to be there by virtue of my difference. When in actuality, my difference was always an advantage in many ways. Being different meant that I wasn't forgettable. Being different meant that I brought an innovative perspective. Being different often meant that I was more empathetic and more able to listen and more able to drive community among the many other people who feel different. And so I think the thing that I have learned is that my difference is an advantage. It is something that gives me power as opposed to something that I should feel self-conscious about. And I just wish that I had known that early. You know, for anybody who is interested in becoming an entrepreneur, I think you have to really take a look at yourself and ask some really deep questions about how much grit you have and how much grit you want to have to deploy. Because it is not a jolly ride being an entrepreneur. Here I am, you know, in Berlin, sitting with you at SuperVenture. This is a great day at work, but not all days look like this. There are a lot of days that are very hard where you're just in the trenches, grinding it out. And it takes what it takes to be successful. It always comes at a cost. And so what I think is important for folks who are considering a career in entrepreneurship is that they don't glamorize the profession, that they really understand that this is something that comes at a great sacrifice. And if that still sounds good to you, then perhaps you should continue to move forward, but it is not a jolly ride. I look for people who have so much grit that even if I were to tell them no, they would just keep going anyway. I look for people who have such a passionate love for the problem that they're trying to solve that even in the face of any headwinds, they're just going to keep moving forward. I think the difference between good and great in our industry really has a lot to do with mindset and courage. And so I don't care so much about where someone went to university or what accolades they had in their career or what finance job they had in their past. Actually, that's largely irrelevant to me. What I look for are people who, in the face of any obstacle, are going to keep moving forward, almost like they could run through a wall. That grit is more important to me than anything else. You know, I tend to be more sector agnostic because I am a conviction-driven investor who really invests in people. With that said, there are certain sectors that are just incredibly exciting right now. I think anybody from San Francisco is incredibly excited about AI and its applications across almost every market. I get particularly excited about applications of artificial intelligence within supply chain transformation because that is where I spend a lot of time. But I also love robotics and I love other consumer tech.